Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the official forensic autopsy by the OIG and FTI Consulting, detailing exactly how the SEC managed to completely miss Bernie Madoff's multi-billion-dollar Ponzi scheme. Guys, it's a truly stunning story of missed opportunities, ignored warnings, and massive systemic failures. We're going to look closely at the exact documents and reports showing how the evidence was literally hiding in plain sight for years, and how the watchdogs just completely failed to bark. We're going to dissect this institutional failure phase by phase. We'll cover 1. The impossible investment returns, 2. Ignoring the red flags, 3. The botched SEC examinations, 4. The fatal failure to verify, and 5. Fixing a broken system. We're going to see exactly how this massive fraud was allowed to just keep rolling unchecked. All right, part 1. The impossible investment returns. Because, as we all know in the financial world, if something looks too good to be true, it almost always is. Take a look at this data from Fairfield Century, which was one of Madoff's major feeder funds. Check out these highlights right here. It explicitly boasts of having only 15 down months since its inception, way back in 1990, alongside a 10.62% compound annual return. Now, if you follow the stock market even a little bit, you know it's a roller coaster, right? It goes up, it goes down. But Madoff's purported strategy was churning out this remarkably unnatural consistency. To a trained eye, that total lack of volatility wasn't a sign of some unparalleled financial genius. It was a glaring mathematical impossibility. Let's move on to Section 2, ignoring the red flags. Because the SEC wasn't operating in a vacuum here. People were actively waving red flags in their faces. The SEC literally sat on highly credible warnings for years. I mean, look at this timeline. It kicked off in 2001 when financial journalists at Barron's and Marr published articles flat out asking how Madoff was pulling off these returns without noticeably impacting the market. Then, in 2003, the SEC got a detailed tip from a highly respected hedge fund manager who had actually done his own independent due diligence. Fast forward to 2004, another detailed email tip hits the SEC's Northeast Regional Office. And how did the agency respond to all this? Well, they delayed, they had no formal system to even track these complaints, so tips just sat idle for up to 8 months before anyone even bothered to open an examination. Which brings us to Section 3, the botched SEC examinations. Because when the SEC finally did decide to wake up and act on these tips, their internal exams were fundamentally flawed right out of the gate. As this official OIG memo bluntly puts it, the examiners, specifically the Office of Compliance Inspections and Examinations, made critical mistakes in nearly every single aspect of their cause examinations. They missed huge opportunities to uncover the scheme. According to the FTI Consulting review, the SEC teams barely planned the exams, and they definitely didn't communicate. Get this. The Washington team and the New York team didn't even know they were both investigating Madoff at the exact same time until Madoff himself told them. Just incredible. And this comparison brilliantly illustrates the massive disconnect going on. You have whistleblowers practically screaming about impossible options trading volume and totally fake returns. But the SEC's response? They got tunnel vision. They narrowly focused on minor infractions, like front-running and cherry-picking. They had detailed emails sitting right there explaining why Madoff couldn't possibly be executing these trades, but the examiners were essentially looking in the wrong direction entirely. The institutional failures during these exams are just staggering to think about. The examiners were essentially acting as blindfolded watchdogs. They were operating out there without branch chiefs to supervise them. They completely lacked basic certified fraud training, which meant they totally missed the massive red flags of Madoff's growing agitation and constantly changing stories. They failed to document key interviews. And honestly, the craziest part? One examination team actually feared they might face legal liability if they simply contacted Madoff's feeder funds to verify his story. So they just took Madoff's word for it instead of doing basic detective work. Let's hit Section 4, the fatal failure to verify. So the absolute crucial question here is, what was the one single, simple investigative step that could have popped this entire multi-billion-dollar illusion? Seriously. How do you actually prove someone is running a Ponzi scheme of this scale and faking their trades? When a guy claims he's trading billions of dollars in equities and options, how do you know for sure he's telling the truth? The answer is basic fundamental verification. It's a simple 3-step process. Step 1, you look at the volume Madoff claims to trade on his client statements. Step 2, you ask an independent third-party clearer, like the NASD or the DTCC, for the real volume they actually processed. And step 3, you compare the two numbers. You never, ever just take the broker's word for it. You always verify with the third party that actually clears the trades. And this is where this story gets truly heartbreaking. Shockingly, the SEC exam team actually drafted a letter in December 2003 to request this exact independent trading data from the NASD. They literally had the letter written and ready to go, but they never sent it. The single most basic tool in the regulatory arsenal, independent verification, was drafted and then just abandoned. To put into perspective just how devastating that one mistake was, check out this data from FTI Consulting. When experts later ran this exact retrospective test for just one feeder fund, the Kinggate Fund, over 5 days in March 2005, the results were just mind-boggling. Madoff's purported volume easily surpassed the entire actual market volume for every single stock. He was claiming to trade more shares in certain companies than the entire global market actually traded on those days. It's an undeniable smoking gun. It literally defies the physics of the stock market. If the SEC had simply mailed that drafted letter, the entire Ponzi scheme would have collapsed right then and there in 2004. All right, finally, Section 5, fixing a broken system. After detailing a forensic autopsy this brutal, how does the SEC ensure they never miss something so glaring ever again? Where do they go from here? Well, the Office of Inspector General's report didn't just point fingers at the incompetence and the systemic failures. They laid out a comprehensive 37-point roadmap to completely overhaul the broken examination system. They recognized that the culture, the training, and the actual day-to-day procedural mechanics of SEC exams needed to be torn down and rebuilt. The cure they prescribed is heavy but absolutely necessary. It includes mandatory third-party verification of trades, so taking a broker's word for it, that's completely off the table now. It demands examiners have direct access to self-regulatory organization databases. It requires modern tracking systems so that credible tips aren't just lost in the shuffle, they actually have to be vetted within 30 days. And perhaps the biggest game changer? It mandates a massive shift in personnel expertise, requiring at least 50% of the staff to become certified fraud examiners within 3 years. They essentially realized they need people trained to spot liars, not just folks who know how to file paperwork. But it really leaves us wondering, and this is the thought I want to leave you with today. Even with all these new rules, strict protocols, and advanced fraud training, are these measures truly enough to catch the next Madoff when the evidence is sitting right there on their desks? Ultimately, rules are only as good as the curiosity and the tenacity of the people enforcing them. Thank you for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning the numbers and never stop demanding independent verification.